Welcome back. So this is a shorter session. We've called it the Regulatory Check-in EU, and the reason we're doing this session is because we're in the EU, and we find that in a lot of the sessions, as we've heard so far, think these acronyms such as MiCA, PSD3, etc., keep cropping up in these different sessions, and so we wanted to say, look, let's have 20 minutes where we just ask a couple of questions in a more focused way. So I'd like to just welcome back to the stage Diego, who was in the previous session, and then introduce Marine from Latvia, our second Latvian representative of the day. Marine has been to both the two previous Fintech Labs, so as I said at the start, it's great to have Marine at her third Fintech Lab, and Marine is actually also taking part in the next session in 20 minutes' time, which is a return to the discussion of sandboxes. So, as I say, just 20 minutes for this one. Before we start, I just wanted to do a poll of the audience and ask you to raise your hand if you are an EU citizen. My hand is not raised, actually. Sadly, can I say that? And can you raise, thank you if you can put them down, thank you. That's, for those watching the live stream, that was definitely the majority. And can you raise your hand if you're not an EU citizen? Okay, so that's maybe about 10% of the audience. Thanks for doing that. So obviously this is an EU-focused session, but hopefully, as we've heard previously, the EU likes to be seen to lead the way in a lot of this financial services regulation. So hopefully some of the things we're discussing will resonate for those who aren't EU citizens. So the aim of this session, as I say, is to look at these acronyms that have kind of been mounting up in recent years. It's the European elections in June, and we've got 20 minutes of two halves. The first half is to ask Diego and Marine to reflect on what has been achieved so far by EU regulation in terms of fintech or the European Digital Finance Strategy. Then the second 10 minutes is looking what's coming up. So we're gonna spend 10 minutes looking what's been achieved, explaining some of these acronyms. We keep hearing the MiCA and the DORA and these acronyms as much as we can. And then, as I say, 10 minutes looking ahead. If anyone has a really burning question, then we'll try and save 60 seconds or so, but I'm aware it's such a short session, we may not get around to it. If you've got a really burning question, I really want to see that hand looking like you really want to ask it. Diego, you're already warmed up, so let's start with you. So it's two questions. I guess that's almost 5 minutes each.
All right.
What has the EU done for us in terms of fintech?
So many things. I think it's a good combination that Marie and I are here because, well, so I do the regulatory part, and then we leave the problem to the supervisor. So probably you will hear two different sides of the same story, very likely. So what's been achieved so far in regulating fintech in the EU? So I think the first achievement is PSD2, so Unbundling Payment Services Directive 2, so the basic rule for all kinds of payments in the EU. And basically I would highlight two features of PSD2. First, we don't know what fintech is. This is a traditional message, right? So PSD2 tells you two kinds of fintech actors, which is the open banking actors, so instant, so payment initiators and account information service providers. So it creates this figure, and it has been important for innovation and to create new ways of paying outside from traditional means of payments, right? And the second one is protecting fraud, against fraud. It's a huge risk of innovation, so PSD2, when introduced strong customer authentication, so the two factors of authentication, this is really an example of how the EU is leading the global regulation in terms of fraud protection. And within the fields of payments, I want to highlight the role of the instant payments regulation, which I think it has been one of the biggest achievements that we, as Spanish presidency of the EU Council last year, I think it's one of the main achievements that we got. First, it is very important from a Spanish perspective because we have this instant payment solution, Bizum, that it has 24 million users in Spain. it's currently partnering with the Portuguese instant payment solution and with the Italian instant payment solutions in order to achieve interoperability and therefore more integration in the EU market. So these are splendid news for the internal market, that we are able to pay our Italian friends within 10 seconds. This is amazing. It's something that cannot be taken for granted. Like this regulation will speed up this adoption of instant payments that, for one reason or another, banks have not implemented yet in the EU. And the standards are there and the technology is there. The regulation will boost them a bit when it's applicable in a few months. And then I think big achievements of the EU as well, outside from payments in the landscape of crypto, is MiCA regulation. So it's the first regulation in the world that has a very big scope, not 100% scope, because it's a bit it's not very up to the market, MiCA now, because the market is evolving so fast.
Right, it's one of the quickest moving.
Yes.
Even the companies are here almost. Some of them are
but at least
here today, gone tomorrow. So it's tough for regulations to keep.
At least exchanges, custodians, stablecoin issuers. Well, it's a beginning. You need to begin by something. Like, we always know that regulation lags behind, but if you don't do anything, then you never do anything. So we will have a review of MiCA for sure at some point to update it. Yeah. And then the DORA regulation, of course. As I said in the previous panel, cybersecurity is the biggest risk to digitalization. So financial entities need to change their minds and integrate resilience. So for me, those are the big achievements of the EU regulation.
Great, thank you. Maureen, the view from yourself and from Latvia.
So, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really pleasure to be here today. I would share it from the supervision point of view, actually. Yes, we have, on European level, achieved a quite good competitive advantage, having own, closed regulatory area. And that are requirements that are harmonized, that are clarity, and it creates open market possibilities for the companies from banking and non-banking to create new types of businesses, and of course to facilitate the innovations. From the other part, we see that are we still competitive enough in a globally? For example, if you're going to the, say, MiCA regulation, how other countries or even continents are treating the same story. So, okay, in European countries, we have achieved quite good enough MiCA regulation. I could agree partly that it is outdated a bit, because the regulation is like sometimes let's say, stays in behind of innovations. And if we look to the new types of the business models in crypto areas, then the MiCA is like our quick solution to fix and to put the regulation in place because it creates new types of systemic risks, and then we need to react. It is a regulatory response on that. If we will write the MiCA today, most probably we will look to from the other angles, because there are like plenty of questions outside the MiCA, and of course we always need to think of why to regulate and shall we regulate everything, because we are trying to regulate too many things sometimes. There are always like, okay, this DeFi market, who is also quite huge market, but is out of scope, and there are other things like metaverse that is not in any regulations. The question, have we regulate or not, because the number of transactions and number of frauds in metaverse, they're equal to the payment transaction of some middle country. But in this sense, I think that MiCA will be in place. It will be a good, stable point where to grow. For the other point, when we create the DORA regulation that also create harmonized activities for all companies and creates new types of the stampers. But again, when we look to the AI Act, for example, there are Europe have approved the AI Act that also will be applicable for financial system, but we will see that, for example, what is the China approach to that? Are they going to limit those innovation in the way as we limit by this act? What is US response? And those approaches to the AI are different. The question is this AI Act is competitive enough to ensure this innovation to grow? And if we will look to the compliance and from the cost point of view, so when you are creating new regulations, who will going to pay for that? So that is the question, because in reality, the payments and the cost of compliance will be on the borders and on the shoulders of the customers. Because just imagine small money institution who is going to issue e-money tokens, what does it mean? It means that a company who would be managed by 10 or 12 people, they have to hire army of compliance people in order to be compliant to MiCA regulation, to Payment Service Directive regulation, to DORA regulation, if they're using AI to AI, and of course IML. So at least 5 regulations will be applicable to a very small company. Who will pay for those? Only customers. And the same cost applicable to the supervisors, because the supervisor have to hire new skills to do the job. They have to create new subtext solution in order to manage the risks. And it's, again, who will be paying for that? Okay, the market participants. In reality, the fintech supervision costs are not enough to cover all the costs. It means that large companies like insurance and banking still have to be in place. What else we see? We see that the consolidation of the sector will happening, but we also see the huge shopping. So due to the MiCA regulation, we see that there are like plenty of companies, they're like going through the different regulatory to find out maybe there is still an easy way to get into the market. So it is always a question, so shall we regulate and how far we need to regulate? Or maybe we can push more on the company structure, on risk management side, in corporate governance to make them more agile and more stronger, and then maybe work on some kind of recommendation level.
Thank you. So as we reach the halfway mark already of this session, when I introduced today, I played a short video from Barbara Werkel from Germany's Federal Ministry of Finance. And during that webinar, I also asked her, what's next for kind of your ministry and this topic in Germany? And this takes us on hopefully to the second half, which is what's next. And she said she would like to see a lot of consolidation after all the EU lawmaking. She said, I think what we need is to give the market a bit of slack to actually adopt these new rules, to actually be able to evaluate these, particularly regarding new technologies. There's been a lot coming from the EU, there will always continue to be, but she was saying, yeah, there'd been a flurry of this activity, we need to, I think she was saying, we need to slow down and consolidate. But, kind of, Marine, you've both alluded to, MiCA is almost not yet fully implemented across the EU, but I guess people are already thinking of MiCA 2, which will be coming round quicker than the gaps between PSD 1 and 2, and now we're thinking of 3. So to take us to the second half of the question, are things going to slow down, speed up from the EU in this area?
Yes, as Marion was pointing out, I think it's a great moment to become a lawyer of fintech. They will have a lot of business without any doubt, because I think things are speeding up. If I have to answer this question with a word, right? You just need to look at all the. So Spain took the Spanish presidency in July 2023. And in June 2023, so one month before the start of our presidency, the Commission released 6 legislative proposals in the field of fintech that we needed to start discussing at the Council. And
a lot of work for you.
Yeah. They pay my salary as well. So there were many things there and very disruptive, and all of them have the potential to really shake the market for the better or worse reason, and this is what we need to discuss, of course, but all of them have a huge potential, right? If I may mention a couple of them, the ones that I think may have bigger impact. Without any doubt, the biggest impact can come from the Digital Europe regulation proposal, right? So as you know, the ECB has been playing with central bank digital currencies since 2020, and the EU came to the conclusion that a digital euro needs a legal basis, needs a regulation that establishes the digital euro. Then, so once we have the legal basis, then a second question is whether we're going to launch it, when, how, and how does it work, right? So what we are doing at the Council and at the Parliament now is, well, thinking very in abstract, because it's a completely new thing in the monetary landscape, how this new digital cash should work, like which characteristics of cash we want to preserve, as we were discussing this morning. Inclusion, this is key, that everybody needs to be able to pay in the 21st century, regardless of digital knowledge and possibilities. Privacy preservation, cash has this characteristic, so very likely citizens will still want to attach to this characteristic, but of course we want to keep the financial sector alive and giving credit to our economy.
I mean, so the digital euro at the moment is it's just started the 2-year preparation phase, I think. So it really gives the institutions now less than 2 years to get the legislation in place and get it agreed if a digital euro were to launch. Is that correct?
The thing is, so the ECB path and the legislative path are two paths that run in parallel, but the conclusion that we are getting from the council legal experts and so on is that the ECB needs the regulation in order to issue a digital euro, because the Treaty of Function of the European Union says that Parliament and Council have the competence to legislate for the use of the single currency. And of course, this is a new use of the single currency. So let's say that the tentative calendar of the ECB is subject to an approval of the regulation by the Council and the Parliament. This is really the first deadline that we should look at, and it's an uncertain deadline because we don't know. I mean, when Parliament will end the review of the text, we don't know when Council will. There's the feeling in the Council is that we are not in a hurry to pass the digital euro because it's something so disruptive that we really need to understand all the implications, to calibrate everything. It's a very powerful instrument to achieve many policy objectives, strategic autonomy, inclusion, innovation, but it has some risk as well. So if one legislative issue needs to be really well thought, it's this.
Yeah, well, I think that the prevailing sentiment among a lot of the leading central banks is don't rush it. It's better to get it right than rush to launch a digital euro. Maureen, with just over 2 minutes left, I just want to ask, does anyone, I said I would come to some if anyone had a burning question. So does anyone, difficult to see? Wonderful, Maureen, that gives you that gives you our final 2 minutes to wrap this session up before you stay on stage anyway for the next Sandboxer session. So, Maureen, what does the future look like? In 2 minutes.
Complicated. Complicated. Why is it complicated? Because actually there is two dimensions what I see. The first is the growing of complexity between the service providers, between the market participants, between the business models, the growing dependence on IT, and the growing dependence on third-party providers. There is like no exit plan even for significant institutions to take back the functions that have been outsourced, and that actually is a problem. If we look to the European level, the problem is much more deeper in IT sector. I would say that we do not have any independent European service providers like Microsoft. Sorry, I know you are sponsoring this event, but we do not have European service provider like that to get the independency, and actually create a huge concentration and systemic risk for all financial sector. I'm not talking about only this company, but there are like Amazon or even all kind of cloud services, the majority of cloud services. They are not European-based companies. And where are our data and where exactly are European money? Because all the transaction in payment sectors, they are already in the clouds without possibility to get this function back. And that is a risk, absolutely real. That is a question of national security, I would say. And of course, growing complexity between the business institutions. And it relies on the capacity and the level of understanding and level of education of the supervisors. Because it's very important to understand the risk. If you could not understand the risk, if you don't know how the technology works, you don't know how to manage where the risk could be concentrating, if you don't know how the service is delivered, because usually, I don't know which company can deliver the service without any interconnection with service provider, third-party provider, or any outsourcing services. So it means that the dependency on any type of service is growing, and internal capacity building is a must. Just short reflection on CBDC, I think that the project could move much more faster if we would have fantastic retail use case of application. Right. So I think that is something we need to start on.
Thank you. I remember both in Estonia 2 years ago, we did have a session on CBDC, and also last year as well. So I'm pleased it's getting a few mentions today, even though we don't have a dedicated session. Diego, anything to close from you? Wonderful, thank you. We were 43 seconds over, so that was, we are checking out of our regulatory check-in, on that note. And I'm going to pass the floor, I think. Maureen is staying on stage for the next session, which is the final session before lunch, but a longer session because we have a bigger panel. So Diego and I will leave the stage, Maureen will stay on the stage, and Siobhan will introduce the next session. Okay.